Okay, you are running against Lauren Boebert. What will you do differently than she has done to represent the people of District 4? What changes should we expect to see if you win this election?
That's a great question. I will do everything different than Lauren is. I've spent a lot of time in all the population centers. There's 21 counties in this district, and I spent a lot of time in Douglas County, in Weld County, in Larimer County, in Arapahoe County, and she's nowhere. She's like a ghost. But whenever I'm out on the Eastern Plains, whether I'm in Fort Morgan or Sterling or wherever, she's in the rural areas. That's where she is because she wants to be in locations where it feels like an echo chamber because she's scared that she's going to go out into Loveland or Windsor and face a little bit of opposition. You pay attention to her policies and her rhetoric and the way that she talks and engages with folks. It's very clear she only represents people on one side of the ideological spectrum. I consider myself highly independent as far as my mindset, my ideology goes. And I just want to stress to people that I will be a representative that serves everybody, not just those who voted for me, not just the people that share the same partisan ideology as I do, but I want to build bridges. I think that's what's missing in our political system. The fact that Democrats and Republicans often view each other as enemies rather than neighbors. I look at the people in this district as my neighbor, and I want to make sure that they have health care. I want to make sure that they have housing. I want to make sure that they're not happy with me all the time, and that when they aren't, I hear about it, because that's what I believe in democracy. So I will hold town halls. I'm the only candidate in this race that's held 7 town halls across 4 different counties that are open to the public, answering the hard questions. And we've had a lot of Republicans come to those. And they're very difficult, but they're moments of growth. So for me, you can expect changes where I'm accountable to everybody, where I represent folks, where I hold at least a town hall every month or so, and that I spend more time in Colorado District 4 than I do in Washington, D.C. That's what I want to do.
Awesome. What are your qualifications to be a U.S. representative?
Sure. This question gets asked a lot. I want to answer it in a couple different ways. My single biggest qualification is that I'm a real integral member of the working class, that I don't live the American struggle. I know exactly what it means because I know what it's like to stay up late at night and wonder how you're going to pay your bills. I know what it's like to be one paycheck away from what they call the kill line in America, one paycheck away from financial disaster, financial ruin. I know what it's like to work 12 and 14-hour shifts in shop floors and manufacturing facilities. I know what it's like to have to make important choices like maybe skipping meals so that my kids don't go without. I know what it's like to sacrifice for the people that I love and the folks around me. And I think that in Washington, D.C., we have way too many lawyers. We have way too many people that have been descendants of nepotism, way too many people that have spent their entire lives cozying up to the money and power systems that have corrupted our political system in the first place. So my qualifications are I'm a manufacturing engineer with 20 years of hands-on blue-collar experience. I've worked with the United States military. I have helped design and produce everything from spinal implants to satellite cooling systems to submarine noise suppression systems. I've worked with the Department of Defense, the U.S. Navy, the Air Force. If anybody that you know has orthopedic implants in their spine or titanium knees, I've contributed to all those designs. I've helped produce them economically. So I know what it's like to focus on supply chains. We have a lot of talk in America about resuscitating domestic manufacturing, but we don't have anybody who's actually lived that and can bring that experience. I'm also a dual degreed environmental scientist. I have a background in environmental sciences and geospatial technology. But I haven't worked in that realm too much other than some independent consulting that I've done because it turns out it doesn't pay as much to save the planet as it does to produce parts. So I've been stuck in between that dichotomy. But I've also worked on a multitude of political campaigns over the last decade plus. I knocked tens of thousands of doors for Joe Biden in rural Pennsylvania to help deliver a win in 2020. I've worked on every campaign from county commissioner to state representative, to state senator, all the way up to U.S. Congress. So I have a lot of political attributes as far as the organizing experience goes. And I'm also an addiction recovery advocate. I'm somebody who has survived an opioid addiction that almost took my life. And I have been on the other side of the aisle helping to create and influence legislation in state houses throughout the country and in our nation's capital. So I do have political experience, but I don't have the normal kind of political experience that you're used to seeing in DC, and I think that's so important.
That's a great advantage, actually. What can the rural communities, including farmers and rural medical facilities, expect in the way of assistance if you're elected?
Yeah, this is a great question. I get kind of upset when I hear people talk about the state of our rural hospitals right now because, yes, the Republicans have defunded the rural hospitals. Yes, they've tanked our rural healthcare systems, but the rural hospitals have been neglected for decades. Seemingly, no matter who's in the White House, Democrat or Republican, we failed to address it. And now that we're at an inflection point where it's no longer sustainable, where it can no longer continue to operate under the metrics that it is now it becomes a big issue. So for me, I will make sure that I meet with all those rural healthcare providers. Unlike Lauren Boebert, I believe in earmarks. I believe in bringing in money to the district directly to the communities that can benefit from it the most. But the type of assistance that they should expect to see from me is, as far as the agricultural standpoint, is an actual farm bill that benefits small family-owned farms and ranchers. I don't know the exact data. I have it somewhere, but I want to say roughly 75 to 80% of all the assistance package in there goes directly to the largest corporate agricultural producers. They can expect to see me enact some trust busting and anti-monopoly legislation, because right now we have 4 meat producers and packers that own the entire market in America. That's a monopoly. So I will help break up monopolies. I will help bring money to our rural healthcare system. But the biggest change that people are going to see in rural America is actually addressing the root cause of why the rural healthcare system is failing. And that's because we live under an unsustainable healthcare system. We are the only modernized country in the world that doesn't guarantee healthcare as a basic fundamental human right. A Medicare for all, a single payer healthcare system that will incentivize the rural redevelopment of our healthcare facilities. And that's really what I'm focused on.
That's awesome. What has your contact been like with farmers and ranchers, and have you run into cuts in the food assistance program and how that's affecting farmers?
Being honest, connecting with farmers and ranchers in Colorado's 4th Congressional District, it's very, very challenging. I've met with a few of them so far that are at least on the independent side of the spectrum and are directly understanding that even though they voted for Trump, that his economic policies are hurting them. But to be honest, I want to say that probably 80% plus of the farmers in Colorado's district are heavily Republican and probably still supporting Lauren Boebert. The way that I'm trying to lean into that is I always reference to them that I grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania on a hay and alfalfa farm with my grandfather. My first job that I held in life was working on a dairy farm. Too often when I talk to those folks, what I hear from them directly is that Democrats in Denver, they don't understand the rural way of life. They don't understand agriculture. They feel that because the Republicans speak to them more, even if their policies aren't in alignment with what is actually economically beneficial for them, they still tend to vote that way. So I've had very minimal contact with those folks, and I've been really looking to expand my direct contact. And the way that I'm doing that is going to community events out in Sterling and Fort Morgan and some of these areas that are heavily agricultural, and just reaching out to them. Just asking, hey, come, this isn't even political. I just want to sit down and I want to find out what issues are affecting you the most. The tariffs are what's affecting them. In Congress, I will work to repeal Trump's unconstitutional tariffs and actually help the farmers here in Colorado. I think that has to be our focus first and foremost. But once again, we have abandoned farmers. We have abandoned them for decades. I remember when my grandfather was telling me in the 1990s how unsustainable it was. I remember working on the dairy farms and seeing how small their profit margins were. The corporate consolidation of big agricultural businesses has just sunk the American dream for farmers. So I really want to focus on how do we create a sustainable agricultural program that actually incentivizes younger people to get involved with it. And I need to do a better job of connecting with some of these folks in Eastern Colorado, but it's a task.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
What is your plan to help the much needed strengthening of our democracy and stop the implementation of Project 2025?
These are radical times that we're living in. So a lot of the concepts and ideologies that I'm going to discuss, maybe even 6 months ago to a year ago, would have been perceived as radical. But like I said, we're living through radical times right now. And what I see continually in DC is a Democratic opposition party that fails to do that. We have to wait till the midterms. We have no power. We're powerless. They're not using their voices. They're not fighting for us hard enough. We need to abolish ICE for starters. ICE has become one of the largest and most well-funded paramilitary forces in the world. They're completely unaccountable. They're unsustainable. They're answering directly to Donald Trump, and they're executing Americans in broad daylight. That is a tall tale sign that we're not sprinting towards authoritarianism, but that we're already there. So some of the things that I will really focus on is improving our electoral system. Our electoral system bears a lot of the responsibility for the lack of democracy. Things such as repealing Citizens United. Corporations are not considered people, and they should not be able to contribute money. I want to get the big money pipelines that have perverted our political institution, eroded people's faith in our democracy out. I want to advocate for things like ranked choice voting that gives the opportunity for independent candidates, for third-party candidates to step in, because I think that our two-party system has drastically failed Americans fundamentally. But I also want to talk about constitutional conventions that enact things like term limits, that pass Second Bill of Rights, that codify and improve some of the language within our Constitution. Because I think the biggest thing that I'm noticing right now is that the checks and balances, they're not balancing each other anymore. I want to expand the Supreme Court. I'm also being supported and endorsed by the citizens impeachment movement right now. And what they are is we've created a slate of what we call courage candidates throughout the country. And basically what we're saying is that we're going to invoke Article 2, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution on day one in Congress to not just impeach Trump, because that only, that's putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, but remove his entire incompetent administration. Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, J.D. Vance. We need to make sure that we don't impeach Trump, because I think we're actually going to flip the U.S. Senate and be able to convict him in the Senate. But if we remove Trump, J.D. Vance could be worse. Speaker Johnson could be worse. So you're going to really see me when I go to Washington take the fight directly to Republicans, fight them. I don't believe that when they go low, we go high anymore. We're operating too much and looking at the world with a lens that no longer exists anymore. So you're going to see me join a slate of brave candidates that are fighters to defend and preserve our constitutional republic, make sure that we abolish ICE and make sure that there's not paramilitary forces, and restore the system of checks and balances in hopes that our democracy can survive.
Do you have the website URL for that organization?
I will share it with you. Absolutely.
I'll put it in the notes after.
Perfect.
Thank you. Where do you get your news from?
That's become increasingly difficult for me. I used to be a big fan of PBS, and we know how that went. I definitely am not watching Fox News. I've seen the corporate takeover, the bowing to Donald Trump from CNN, from MSNBC.
CBS.
I've been really, really disillusioned to see how they held President Biden to such high standards for years, and they have given so much oxygen and allowed Donald Trump to get away with everything. To be honest, I've resorted more to independent media.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the TikTok algorithm is being suppressed, TikTok gets a lot of slack. Like, oh, that's where young people are getting their information from. Well, yeah. Do you want to know why? Because it's people holding a camera in real time, showing you exactly what's going on. Like, there's no distortion, there's no corporate takeover of it. So for me, finding credible news sources has become even more difficult, especially in the age of artificial intelligence. So I make sure that when I do read something, that I at least run a deep scan on it and make sure it's real in the first place. So I don't have a single source. I probably spend at least 2 hours a day reading the news, because there's so much going on to stay current with it. And I get it from a multitude of media outlets, and then I cross-reference it to independent journalists and what's going on social media.
Great strategy.
It's not easy.
No. Do you think cuts in food assistance programs are affecting rural communities? This was more a question when the shutdown happened, but it looks like we're going to have another shutdown.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, when I was out there exactly when that was happening, yes, it was hurting rural communities. Absolutely. It was hurting people throughout the country. I think we need some major reforms there, but we also need to build an economy where people don't have to depend on food stamps for survival. I grew up on food stamps when I was 5, and my dad got sick with MS, and we went from being able to, sustain the American dream to living the American nightmare overnight. And that was meant to be temporary. We need to cultivate systems where people aren't reliant on it for decades at a time. And we need to stop companies like Walmart from, paying minimum wage slave labor while we subsidize the cost for people because they can't afford they can't afford their basic food. We need to drive the median wage, not just the bottom wage in America, but drive the median wage in America, because people just aren't making enough money to sustain themselves right now. So,
corporations are taking home record profits and paying their CEOs millions, billions of dollars.
Sure. This is unchecked. This is not free market capitalism. This is crony capitalism. This is, how does, I can't even remember how Bernie says it all the time. I can hear it in my head, but it's, corporate welfare and then rugged individualism for everybody else. Corporate socialism. We stand so much against democratic socialism in America, but my dad used to say it all the time, that we have been bailing out corporations for decades, but the American people never seem to get a piece of that bailout. And that's just the reality. Corporate greed is at an all-time high. The oligarchs have fully seized control of our democracy. And the biggest point that I want to make to that is we are no longer a constitutional republic. We are no longer a functioning democracy. We're a semi-functional democracy, but the oligarchs and the corporatists have hijacked both major political parties, and they're the ones writing the tax laws. They're the ones writing all the bailouts. They're the ones intentionally tanking our economy, driving up and inflating housing prices, and cashing in on it.
Okay, I'm going to stop for now, and then I'm going to restart.